and CEO of Thinking Folks Consulting, and he's going to be managing and moderating this session. He's someone who's got more than 3 decades of R&D experience with organizations like Unilever and Mars Wrigley in various leadership roles. In his last stint at Mars Wrigley, he headed R&D for the Asia Pacific business. He has vast experience in developing products and process technologies across a wide range of products, from beverages to dressings and tomato products to chocolates, gums, mints, and confectionery. And he's been built strong and responsive R&D teams, working with business teams, and strong science and technology capabilities. So thank you, Mr. Tompe, for moderating this session. My next speaker, Mr. Richard Warren, Regional Director of Food, BSI. I'd really like to welcome you, and thank you so much for joining us from the UK for this session.
Pleasure.
And I would really like to personally thank BSI for being a gold sponsor for us at this event. And I think it's a fantastic way for us to be able to really look at the validation of what we are trying to do here as well, and a whole joint purpose, a common purpose, to be able to bring safe, wholesome, healthy, nutritious food into the markets. So I really, really appreciate your kind gesture to be able to sponsor us.
My total pleasure.
Mr. Richard Warren, his food career began actually as a food technologist and spans almost 40 years, and he has worked in all aspects of international food, ingredient, and manufacturing sectors. Richard pioneered the import, processing, and distribution of non-GMO soy lecithin from Brazil, designing and building unique soy lecithin processing plant in the UK. Richard founded Cert ID Europe, a UCAS accredited certification body, Food Chain Europe, and Cert ID Asia. As BSI's EMEA Region Director for Food and Retail Supply Chain, he drives BSI Food Initiative across the region. Richard is an acknowledged expert on genetic modification and is a fellow of the IFST and the Society of Food Hygiene and Technology. Thank you so much for joining us from the UK, Richard.
Thank you, Rinka.
Thank you. We have Mr. Brent Charlton, CEO and President, NWave Corporation, joining us from British Columbia, from Vancouver. And it is an absolutely crazy hour of the night, but thank you so much for joining us, Richard. Brent. Brent is the CEO and President of NWave Corporation, based in Vancouver. NWave's revolutionary REV technology allows for rapid, gentle drying that preserves flavor, color, and nutrients for premium snacks, meals, and ingredients. The team of food science and REV technology experts help their food processing partners around the world tailor the technology to the specific processing needs. NWave's team has helped companies unlock innovative product offerings, otherwise impossible with existing technologies, and I can speak for that. From a series of guided product development stages, including lab facility rentals, on-site machine rentals, and access to our food science experts, is what REV technology does. NWave does provide, and its licensed REV technology is to more than 50 companies, including Calbee, PepsiCo, Arla Foods, US Army, and Dole Sunshine Company. Thank you so much, Richard, for joining us in this session. Mr. Shantanu Sadakumar is the He's the Feedstock Supply Chain Partnership Manager for Nestea in the APAC region. Passionate about sustainable value creation from waste streams and greenhouse gas emissions reductions, Shantanu began his career developing renewable energy projects under the UNFCCC Clean Development Mechanism. As a successful professional, Shantanu has developed more than a decade of experience in value creation across both food and non-food sources. And past experiences include commercialization innovations across palm oil extraction, vegetable oil processing, nutrient enhancement for feed production, and both cellulosic and conventional ethanol production for global companies. We also have Nestea and NWave at the exhibitor booth, and of course there is BSI, of course, at the exhibitor booth. I would request all my participants to go out there, reach out, and understand what these new technologies are about. And I'm now going to be handing it over to Mr. Tompe to take it from here, and I'm super excited to listen into the conversation.
Thanks, Rinka. That's a good context you have set, and I personally welcome each one of you, all the panelists on the group once again, and happy to interact with you and learn from you people. And to set a context here, as you know, India is either a #1 producer of many of the ingredients, many of the food products, or #2, And in summary, it's one of the biggest food producers in the world, with a large fruit and vegetable market, or the sugarcane producer, or even rice and spices and nuts and various other things. India has loads of potential to become a big food processing country. I think that each one of you know it very well, and I don't need to re-emphasize that how big it is. And it is here, coupled with a population of around 1.3 billion people, the challenge is producing a safe and nutritious food which is available to everybody at an affordable price. And that's the challenge which most of the food processing companies in the country are facing. And a great amount of work is being done by various companies across the country, and the academia and the institutions and the government of India, putting in lots of plans, be it regulations or be it sustainability, be it nutrition standards, be it new technologies and all those things. Each one is playing their role in making this happen. And it is in this context when we thought of having this summit of Food and Nutrition Summit, the response was quite great, and we got to hear over the past 2 days lots and lots of stuff from various experts across the field. And today I'm equally excited to hear from three of you, and very diverse fields. One on the processing part of it, and one from the sustainability part of it, and other from the standards. I'm equally keen to learn from your expertise and also to tell people what we can do for the Indian food processing industry. Yeah, it is with this context I would like to open the floor to each one of you. Possibly, Richard, you can start with you to give a brief introduction about your organization and the role you play, and the role of BSI in India, followed by Shantan, and then over to Brent. Thank you.
Very good indeed. Mr. Gurnan, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to speak at this event today. I'm really thrilled to be talking with you this afternoon. I particularly enjoy working with Indians and with India. There's a long history of tradition and affection between the United Kingdom and India. And I was one of the people that opened up the soy export market for India about 20 years ago, for export of soy lecithin, soya meal into Western Europe for the first time. And cut a long story short, as a result of that and working with the Indian High Commission in London, was invited to meet the Queen of England as a result of that, which was completely outstanding. But it just goes to show the drive that India has, and the love of technology, that it can bring about enormous change very quickly within such an important nation within Southeast Asia. British Standards Institution has been around since 1901, and we are a royal charter company, which makes us rather different. We don't have any shareholders. This makes us independent and puts us in a rather unique position. We're experienced as the world's first national standards body, and we were founded when we were founded in 1901 as the world's first. We were also one of the founding members of ISO in Switzerland, and we represent the United Kingdom's interests across all sectors at ISO. Every nation has a national standards body, and we're it for the United Kingdom. We're also thought leaders. We have shaped 9 out of the top 10 business improvement standards in the world. So ISO standards that you'll be familiar with all started life as British standards, like ISO 9001, 45,000, 14,000, 27,000 cybersecurity, which dated back actually to a British standard in 1995. So we've shaped the way that the world operates, and through standardization, it permits scale and opening markets, business opportunity, and competitive advantage. Today, we operate globally in 193 countries. We have more than 100,000 clients globally. And as I said, we're a business improvement organization that enables market access, business improvement, competitive advantage through the use of standards and what we're doing and how we are really wanting to help India succeed in this challenging and competitive global market.
Thanks, Richard. Over to you, Shankar.
Thanks, Mr. Tompe, and greetings, everybody. Thank you as well to Vicky for the invitation to speak at this esteemed panel discussion, and also, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to represent Neste in this panel for disruptive technologies. Neste, of course, is a leader in innovation, renewables, and also circular solutions. Now, before I give, well, first, I would like to introduce the company in the background to set the context for the role we can play in collaboration with the food industry in India. Firstly, our purpose. We're a purpose-driven company creating a healthier planet for our children. This is the modus operandi and the guidance for all business decisions and strategy. It has taken the company from a Finnish fossil fuel company, which started out in 1948, to the global leader in renewable diesel, renewable sustainable aviation fuels, and also now the fourth most sustainable company in the world. We are about 25% of our workforce is in innovation, and we invest about 75% of our research budget on renewable feedstocks. Now, our carbon footprint currently, we are looking to be carbon neutral in all our production capabilities by 2035. When we look at the carbon handprint, we have removed 10 million tons of carbon emissions reductions from our customers globally in 2020. And our strategy is to increase that to 20 million tons by 2030. During this challenging period as well, Neste has remained focused in our commitment to making a healthier planet for our children and continue to invest in production capabilities throughout this challenging pandemic period. So we're actually growing from 3 million tons of renewable product production to 4.5 by 2023. Now, our business is, to introduce the business, we are spread across three main business units. So I've spoken about renewable diesel. There's also renewable aviation fuels, and also renewable polymers and chemicals, which I think is also very interesting in a lot of the conversations we've had with the food industry in India, simply because we are working towards the use of green fuels for chemicals and plastics production, and also for recycling waste plastics into fuel production. So this is the activities in this field. Now, I guess a question naturally is going to be, what is a biofuels, renewable fuels company presenting in a nutrition conference in India? Well, specifically, out of all of these products and offerings, 92% of the feedstocks used are from waste and renewables. And now a large proportion of the feedstocks that are going into this production is used cooking oil. And herein is where the relevance to India is, because in used cooking oil and the safe and sustainable removal of this from food streams and food productions is a challenge in India. It was brought up in many of the sessions previously in this series, and it is critical for nutritious and healthy food production and consumption. So the role we see in India is to collaborate across the value chain with collectors, with food beverage operators, with industry, to encourage and unlock how we can remove this waste stream from food production in a safe and also in a commercially sustainable manner to create a healthier planet for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Brent.
Thanks, Mr. Tompe. And again, thanks to Rinka for the invitation to join and participate today. A little bit more about our company, Enwave Corporation. We're the 20-year overnight success story, a Canadian publicly traded entity that successfully developed patented vacuum microwave technology which we refer to as radiant energy vacuum technology, or REV for short. We're aiming to basically disrupt the global food industry, a pretty large goal, but we're working our way through it relationship by relationship by deploying our technology to create new applications that are healthy, innovative, and on the forefront of trying to turn B and C grade produce into upcycled, commercially saleable product. REV technology, what we've developed, is by far the most scalable and reliable continuous vacuum microwave technology available in the world. And it offers clear, quantifiable processing advantages over the incumbent methods. That's one of the clear differentiating factors with our technology versus other companies that have tried to develop vacuum microwave, is that none have provided the scale that will match up with some of the larger food manufacturers. And that's where we can offer them the solution. We're actively commercializing our innovation primarily through a licensing model in which we grant our license partners certain rights to use REV to produce specific product types in defined geographic regions. And to date, EnWave has signed over 50 licenses and sold machinery to each of those companies, many of those notable businesses mentioned by Rinka in the preamble. REV is currently being used commercially to produce dried fruit, vegetable, dairy, meat, seafood, spice, and alternative protein snacks and ingredients, and is a viable option, as I mentioned, to dry upcycled foodstuffs into viable consumer products and reduce waste. REV technology allows for controlled volumetric drying at low temperatures. So by applying a vacuum, we're therefore lowering the boiling point of water, manipulating the temperature at which the water is removed from the foodstuff. And our REV machinery typically applies a vacuum in a range of 20 torr, drying food products between room and body temperature. But our tech is also capable of drying below the triple point. A good example of that is our partnership with Merck Pharmaceutical outside the food realm to drive vaccinations and eliminate the need for cold chain storage on a go-forward basis. So by gently drying food materials, we're able to preserve high levels of nutrients, higher than the incumbents of air drying and spray drying, and comparable to freeze drying, retain more color and natural flavor, better than freeze drying, and as well as create unique textures because of course we're drying under vacuum. Further, the use of microwave energy allows for even drying throughout the process, which translates to the ability to achieve a wide range of final residual moisture content throughout. We're monetizing REV technology by first selling the machinery up front. We also collect a technology access fee under the license in exchange for certain exclusivities that we provide for the use of this innovation. We also provide toll manufacturing services at our headquarters in Vancouver, Canada, on the West Coast, and through the sale of our REV dried cheese snack in North America, which we launched as a proof of concept, then turned out to be a very successful consumer packaged good product called Moon Cheese through our wholly owned subsidiary based in the United States. We have deployed REV machinery to more than 20 countries across 5 continents, including most recently in India, with a deal that we consummated with LG Foods, another exhibitor at the event that is being held today and yesterday. India is a major target market for EnWave, and we're hoping to share our comprehensive know-how with interested parties to accelerate product and process development and ultimately unlock value for each new license partner we confirm. The shift in Indian consumers' ambitions, including a desire for better, more balanced quality of life with a focus on health, safety, and more family time, all within a more sustainable environment, bodes well for the adoption of REV in the Indian market. And with that, Mr. Tompe, we can proceed.
Thank you very much, Brent. It's very interesting to hear about the technology part of it. Let's start the conversation with this particular thing. And to start with, yesterday when we were discussing, as Rinka was telling earlier, there was a lot of conversation about supply chain efficiencies and supply chain challenges in India as to how the products can reach the end consumer in a proper way, in a safe manner and all that. And there's a lot of conversation also about using technology to overcome the absence of cold chain in this country, and how preservation and how standards can be used to do that. So it's here, Richard, where possibly you can bring in your expertise and help us understanding in a country like India, which is challenged on infrastructure and availability of cold chain, how technology can be used for food safety and improve the food supply situation.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Well, in my experience, my long experience with India, India is an early adopter of technology, very tech savvy. And I think that is a big advantage that the nation actually has over many others. Um, if you go back to the 1980s, for example, when we had printers connected to our desktop or mainframe computers, as they were called then, they were inkjet printers. They were slow. The quality wasn't particularly good, but we all thought they were great. But now look what we've got. We've got wireless laser printers, high color, high definition, and they're fast and they've become much, much cheaper. We've known, of course, from other sectors that the cost of technology reduces by a factor of 2 every year. And one of the most exciting technologies which is coming forward, which is highly innovative and really steps over the issues about not having an efficient cold chain in India, is 3D printing. So this is, of course, where you're able to literally print food exactly where you need it from the basic components. This is a very exciting technology. It would have a tremendous impact, of course, in Africa, where you cannot necessarily export frozen or chilled meat because of the distances involved and the temperatures involved. By the time you've got products there, they're going to be rotten. But how could it be if you could print those products actually where you needed them? And this is an exciting technology. It is like an inkjet printer at the moment. It is slow, it is cumbersome, but I can guarantee you that it's going to get faster, it's going to get better, and it's going to get cheaper and definitely more accessible. So we probably won't get quite like Star Trek in the next few years, where they just open a microwave door, or what looks like a microwave door, Brent, anyway, and pulls out a finished roast chicken, for example. But I think it's going to get something towards this kind of technology. And this, of course, is going to mean that we can have food that is printed and produced where it's actually needed. It may even, I'm sure, within the next 100 years, when we're all long dead and gone, that this kind of technology will be in people's homes. This is how we've seen other technologies being rolled out. Being able to produce, print food where it's needed that is safe and highly nutritious, because we believe if food isn't safe, it's not actually food. I think that's an important takeaway. So there's some exciting technologies coming around the corner that are going to literally leap over the challenges and difficulties that confront India. And as I say, India is an early adopter of technology and even improves on existing technology, because this is the kind of nation that India is, that really demonstrates these kind of powerful changes to the world. I really think that 3D printing of food has got a lot to offer. And again, it'll be those companies that are early adopters that are going to set the standard, to coin a phrase, of what 3D printing looks like and how and what can be printed. So we'll see new companies emerging into this space to provide that need, to open up the opportunities and accelerate what can be done in this area. That would be my opening gambit on that one, Mr. Gurnand.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. That brings me to you, Brent, which is about the next exciting thing which you people are doing about the entire REV technology in drying and other things. And how do you think is this different from a conventional drying, and how different is it? And given focus on the food safety and also the nutrition part of it, how is your technology helping address that specific question related to the delivery of nutritious food to people?
Thanks for the question. So in comparison to the two primary incumbents, which for us are air drying and freeze drying, we have very clear advantages, quantitative advantages, but there are many different drying technologies out there. And and some of which we don't compete with. So spray drying, for instance, we wouldn't consider a competitor, given that there's a requirement for the foodstuffs that we dehydrate to have at least 25 to 30% total solid content in most cases. But for the majority of foodstuffs which have higher solid contents and are very much applicable to our technology, we have a clear advantage in time of processing. So it's typically taking less than 25% of the time that it would take to process the equivalent amount of materials in either an air dry or freeze dry process, while again maintaining an extremely high level of nutritional content. When compared to freeze drying, which is the gold standard in nutritional retention, we're about 90% of the way to freeze dry, but of course, producing it the same amount of product in far less time and far less costly. So when compared to freeze drying, the total cost, taking into consideration the ongoing OPEX and the upfront CAPEX, we're looking at between a 30 to 40% cost savings overall when we're looking at the process. When compared directly to air drying, it's slightly more expensive on a per unit production base, but of course the quality is so much higher. So for those companies that are adopting our technology, they're really positioning themselves as a higher quality premium offering snack or ingredient that is going to be somewhat differentiated in terms of the texture based on the unique vacuum application. I did also mention that vacuum microwave, or our term for it, REV, is volumetric in nature. So that gives the user the ability to finalize final end moisture content that is variable while still going below the critical threshold of water activity to maintain shelf stability. So to your question, this technology can be applied to many different foodstuffs with high nutrient content output with shelf stability that can last in many cases longer than 1 to 2 years based on the quality of the packaging of the product. Lastly, there are a number of food applications produced with vacuum microwave that simply cannot be replicated through the use of air dry or freeze dry. And a few examples would include cheese and yogurt snacks with active probiotics be claimed on marketing materials, as well as because of the variable and moisture content, chewy, high nutrient fruit and vegetable snacks that are shelf stable, which is critically different from typical air dried fruit snacks, which don't have the same levels of vitamin C and other critical nutrients.
Thank you, Brent. Over to you, Shantan. Very specific question on the sustainability part of it, which is we all know that the sustainability is something which is being spoken about very well, and it's also a fact that it is well established that sustainability brings in a great deal of profitability into the system, into the businesses as well. And I'm quite keen in understanding how Nestle is working towards bringing in your expertise into the food processing sector. If you can elaborate further on what you had spoken earlier about utilizing the waste part of it.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Tonpe. Now, speaking specifically, what we do at Nestle is we create sustainable supply chains and value chains. So our innovation, firstly, in the back end is on renewable products, be it on renewable road transport or aviation fuels and renewable plastics and chemicals. So this is a long-term demand for sustainable input, which is the waste and renewable materials. And herein lies the value creation and the value add, which we look forward and are excited to bring to India, because we have a pathway for a sustainable commercial offtake of especially used cooking oil, which creates an incentive to remove this harmful material from food production in FBOs, in restaurants, etc. in India. Now, we are not a producer of this waste material, but we have invested heavily in the collection, in the aggregation, and also the supply chain of this material worldwide. Like I mentioned, we are now growing our production capacity to 4.5 million tons per annum. Now, to put this in perspective, about, say, 60,000 tons was of used cooking oil was collected out of India, which is barely a few points of a percentage of the UCO that is generated in India itself. So that is the scale of what can be, of the value that can be created in India. And so with our global innovation and expertise across the collection, the supply chain, the processing, and the transportation of this material, we're excited to engage specifically in the value chain in India with sustainability focused food beverage organizations, because we see like was mentioned earlier by Brent and also Richard, there are these early adopters, and we believe that once these early adopters, which are like-minded companies with a sustainability profile, start looking into the safe removal of used cooking oil in food streams in a sustainable manner, this will create and grow this value stream in India, improve the business case. Now we're also speaking with like-minded collectors and aggregators across India, be it from the major municipalities and the regions, and across with companies with a regional coverage as well. And what we look to do is to work with them to grow their pool of used cooking oil collection to feed into this value chain. Because essentially, sustainability, it's all about creating that commercial incentive from supply and demand. And we see this role as what we can play in India. Now, in addition to this, so besides removal of the used cooking oil, which is the harmful product, and creating this economic opportunity in India, we see a key role that that Neste can play in energy security as well for the country. Again, bringing back to the point about our company's origins as a fossil fuel company in Finland, which doesn't produce its own fossil fuels, to India, which is also looking towards energy security. There is a small fraction of this used cooking oil, which is currently used for biodiesel production. And as we understand it, a lot of this has attributed to the supply chain. And so herein is the role we see Neste can play to work with our partners across the value chain to build that infrastructure, which will be needed to grow the pool of used cooking oil, which can be used as sustainable fuels.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, the next question which I have is for you, Richard, which is about the use of technologies and how we can improve the transparency and traceability in the food supply chain system. And this is something which has become very big, especially in the current pandemic situation, because of concerns from consumers about the food safety part of it and the food reliability part of it. And also about which as a offshoot of this particular thing, which has brought into the system, is the inability to go and test on the site and evaluate and audit the producers on the site. How do you think the technology and how do you think the various developments in the industry can be used to improve this part of it?
Okay, very good. Thank you for the question. Well, first of all, I would like to give you an example of where standards have failed, but where standards actually work and continue to work well. I think everybody on this call today, I've got a drawer at home which is full of electrical plug sockets, round pin plugs, square pin plugs, adapters. When we travel around the world, we've got to get all of these adapters to try to talk to one another. And this is an example where there is no standard. The reality is that we should all have a standard electrical plug, but the industry is now to the point where it doesn't want a standard, because there are many companies that are making quite good money out of having different electrical plugs. But I can give you an example of where standards really do work. And when standards work, nobody actually notices. This is one of my credit cards. We've all got a piece of plastic like this. We sat down, BSI sat down with the financial sector, who were all saying the same things, that they wanted to really enable the way that we as consumers managed money, spent money, saved money, etc. But they needed a system, a standard card size with a standard strip with information on it, that you could put into any ATM on the planet and you could retrieve money. So this was a breakthrough, because We don't even think about it now. We can get money anywhere. That's because there is a standard for the size. I mean, later on, I mean, that this is developed into the Wi-Fi, the chip, and of course, what's on our phones now, which is actually even more secure than a credit card. Every time you use your phone to pay for something, it's like creating a credit card and then ripping it up. It's got digital encryption built into it, so it's really advanced. But nobody actually notices that's happening. That's the power of standards. The food industry, unfortunately, is very much like the plugs and sockets. There are so many different food schemes out there. At the last count, globally, there was more than 440 different kinds of food schemes. Some of them not related to food safety. Some of them are related to sustainability, all sorts of things. Very often single issue standards. But this is where technology can really begin to step into this place. So going back to the money analogy, this is what we would call an analog credential. Some people have it, some people have a lot of it, some people don't have enough of it, but it's an analog credential. It doesn't contain any information about you. It's easily transferable, it's easily lost. As far as my wife's concerned, easily spent as well. But the credit card actually provides a digital credentiality that goes with you, because the information that also goes with that particular spend is also connected to you personally. A passport, a driving license, these are all analog credentials, and over the course of time will become much less important as we step into an ever more digital world. And what we're looking at here are cryptographic tokens. So this is really getting into the areas of blockchain. Blockchain isn't actually a new technology anymore. It's been around for some time. Few people really understand it, but it was through our work with Origin Trail, which was the first purpose-built platform back in 2001, that enabled data about the product, its source, how it was made, the trainings, the certifications that organization has, to be encrypted using this method. And now it's going to be becoming much more important as we go into a direct to consumer world, you know, the world where we are using our credit cards instead of cash, where we're using blockchain technology to provide additional trust and assurance about how the food has been produced, where it's been produced, what other issues were connected with the production of that food product, to do with modern slavery, for example, which is becoming important. And this, of course, is very important with a direct-to-consumer model, where companies really are using the changes over the last couple of years with COVID. This has driven and accelerated this change to really drive that consumer relationship that this new direct-to-consumer model actually has. So there are new technologies out there which are providing that level of traceability and transparency within food supply chains that we're going to see ever more. And it's these new technologies which are going to give India and Indian producers that advantage, and also a means to standardize their approach, particularly with a direct-to-consumer model.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you very much. So coming to you, Brent, on this particular thing on sustainability, and also on the technology which you have developed, how do you think this can help a disruption in the entire food processing part of it, and making the healthier food applications, especially on the snacking area? Sorry, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I knew that would happen at least once during this particular conference. Thanks for that. What I was saying is that many of our current license partners came to us looking for solutions just for those 2 points. Firstly, finding a sustainable option to convert what used to be waste product into commercially viable ingredients with high nutrition. And second, many companies have come to us operating in the snack food vertical, looking for ways to differentiate themselves and provide healthier options to their consumers. And so I guess they're asking themselves the questions, how can they differentiate themselves in a very highly competitive and quickly evolving category? And I'd like to think that part of that answer is the use of vacuum microwave dehydration technology. It's no secret that high heat and oxidation will damage the nutritional properties of food, and that's where a lot of the incumbent drying platforms fail. So by eliminating those two key variables from the equation, we're allowing our partners to produce healthier snacks and ingredients, and further the speed that I mentioned earlier from using radiant energy vacuum technology allows for the preservation of the aforementioned nutrients because it minimizes the opportunity for upstream degradation due to that quick conversion to a shelf-stable state. Also, on the conversion of, call it B or C grade produce into upcycled food ingredients, the cost of our platform, and again, when compared to say freeze drying or even air drying, for instance, given the time that it takes, is attractive enough from an economic standpoint for introduction. One of our most recently announced partnerships, Dole Sunshine Company, we have several projects ongoing, but one of them is taking a hard look at ways that we can help assist, and again, in the upcycling of what seems to be annual waste product that they're trying to reduce. So as I mentioned, many of our licensed partners are developing new healthy snack applications that are better for you. And given the snacking trends in India, from what I've read up on, creating that differentiated proposition by addressing the relevant needs of consumers will continue to remain key. And we can provide opportunities to produce portable on-the-go iterations that will deliver on the key expectations of the Indian consumer, which could include high protein, high nutrients, among other things. And lastly, I would just say that high quality and cost of production has historically conflicted. And we've proven many times over with our partners that REV can be used in economical fashion to produce highly nutritious food products. And I hope to do that with many other Indian partners as we move forward.
Thanks, Brent. Just to continue on that particular thing, so there is a huge part of the food processing sector in India is on the medium and small scale part of it. How do you think the technology which you have on hand right now can fit into this type of things, where there's a lot of challenge on capital and on the scale part of it?
Yeah, so I would answer that question by saying that we offer scalable machinery. So for small entrepreneurial ventures that want to trial the machinery and develop new products, we work very, very closely with those organizations. So just because we name dropped several Fortune 500 companies at the preamble, that doesn't mean that all companies we work with are that large. We've worked with single entrepreneurs, small groups, and tried to go through the process of proving out economically viable options for their products of interest. And so the cost to evaluate our technology ranges, and we want to ensure that we're not putting any roadblocks in the way of innovation and disruption for active entrepreneurs in the food space.
Thank you. That's a similar question to you also, Shantan, on this particular subject, which is about the medium and small scale industries in India. How do you bring in the sustainability awareness? How do you bring in that entire end-to-end approach rather than just one part of focusing on one product or one part of the entire operation and the impact on the sustainability part of it? How do you think we can bring in that?
Sure. I think there's two parts for this question, Mr. Tonfe. So, firstly, through the demand we create for this waste product, we look to create a multiplier effect through the economy within the ecosystem. So what this means is that not only are we working with the companies that are generating, the large companies that are generating used cooking oil at the manufacturing level, but also with small restaurants, etc., QSRs, HoReCa, cafeterias. Really, we are looking to collaborate with all sectors of the economy. Now, in another sense, you look at the entrepreneurs and the collectors, which come in many different shapes and sizes. Of course, Neste, we don't collect the used cooking oil directly, but we work with our supply partners and collection partners and aggregators in the industry. And so and these partners also collect from the smaller players as well. So through this demand, which is coming directly from the distributors and aggregators, it filters in to the MSMEs and also the smaller restaurants as well. So not just the large food beverage organizations. For example, we have a team on the ground in India, and they're easily contactable. Their names Akshay Devpura. We have them in the booth at the Nestle booth. But our team is actively speaking with restaurant owners, single restaurant owners as well, to understand their needs in terms of used cooking oil collection, and then connecting the dots with our supply partners and collection partners as well. Because really, we see our role here and how we contribute as an innovator and as a first mover to develop that whole supply chain, taking in that expertise from more mature markets into what can work in India. So regardless of company size, in terms of their position in the value chain, and etc. And another scope I wanted to bring up is this is an example on our renewable plastics and plastics recycling business. For example, in the UK, we've gone into strategic collaborations with companies such as Unilever and also UK research innovation agencies in order to fund the scale up of technologies, so local technologies that are investing in waste plastic recycling. Neste's role here is to upgrade and process this waste plastics recycled material. And the collaboration with Unilever is to design the green packaging. So then again, for a sustainable practice, we are contributing towards the value stream. So creating that supply and demand, and also the infrastructure needed to drive this business proposition. So those are two real ways. So directly engaging the industry itself, regardless of size, and also collaborating across consumer goods production companies, food companies, and government as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brent. In fact, this is one place where there is a lot of data which is being collected by you and your team, Shantam. And also this data and the information which is available brings me to the next question to you, Richard, as to how do you think we can use AI in using this particular information in creating a data-driven supply chain quality assurance part of it?
Indeed, Mr. Gurnand. And what I was going to, before I answer that, there's a question that's popped up in the chat here, which I think I ought to address and give people some good news here, because it just says here, how is BSI working with companies on auditing and certifying? Not everyone can afford, let's say, FSSC 22000 or BRC. How do smaller companies who want to give safe food go about it? I think it's a really, really good question. So first of all, let's talk about BRC and FSSC 22000. These are two heavy-duty GFSI food safety schemes. They're very challenging. They're very detailed. The BRC is particularly prescriptive. And unless you've got dedicated people running those quality management systems, it's really best not to start to even try, because they are that difficult. If you go back 21 years when the BRC was first started, the standard was essentially on to create a standard which just made a food safety management system produce food that was both safe and legal. Every 3 years, the standard goes through another iteration, and we're about to have issue 9 next year, and there's always something new that's been added in. And so now the whole scheme has been bloated with a lot of stuff that's nothing to do with food safety anymore, but contains stuff that really is just there because British retailers think, well, it's just put it into a standard because they can't be bothered to audit for it. So it's got away from its original beginnings as a food safety scheme to include a lot of other stuff, a lot of other peripheral stuff. The good news is that we have the BSI HACCP and GMP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, and Good Manufacturing Practice Standard. We currently certificate in excess of 7,000 organizations, particularly in Asia and Pacific, who have no intentions of supplying a British retailer, but they want to demonstrate that they are capable of producing safe and legal food that everybody can enjoy, and they can use this as a means to get market access. And it is really like it's like a BRC version 1 in many ways. It goes back to the original spirit and intent of what a food safety program is all about, to produce food safe and legal food consistently. And it is a standard which covers all of the essentials, and it is highly accessible and very appropriate for small and medium-sized companies that really want to integrate and demonstrate that their systems are effective and working without really stepping into the realms of something like an FSSC or a BRC, these heavy-duty programs, which require much more effort, looking at things which are really of a side issue when it comes to food safety. So concentrating on the basics and doing them well is often the difference between success and failure. And within the BSI, HACCP and GMP program, that is definitely the way forward. On the role of AI and IoT, again, I think we're on the verge of exciting breakthroughs. And we've seen this in automotive in particular. You know, and we're beginning to see this in engineering as well. So you'll remember, you know, with our cars, for example, every year, whether you'd done 100,000 miles or whether you'd done 10,000 miles, you always had to have the oils changed, the plugs changed, the filters changed, and sometimes, you know, the car may not have even been out of the garage, but there was a requirement to change perfectly good components. With AI, it actually allows food manufacturers with such equipment to have what we call predictive analytics. So the system is set up to say, well, this particular component is going to fail within the next 2 weeks, or this component is requiring a service within the next 3 months or something like that. And this is directly out of automotive. So if you talk to, initially it came from high-end cars like Lamborghini and Ferrari, so that you didn't actually have to worry about servicing, but because the car would be talking to the dealership and arranging not only its own service, but what kind of service and what components need to be replaced. And that is all as a result of artificial intelligence. This has become, as I've said before, much cheaper and much more accessible, much more accurate as companies have expanded its application into other areas, particularly food engineering and food management. So predictive analytics is really going to help to drive a culture where we have what we call always on. The old model, the current model, and it's an outgoing model in actual fact, of a food safety audit where we are just showing up once a year to do an audit. And let's face it, we often see plants which might be just perfect because they know we're coming. But that really isn't the spirit of what producing safe food is all about. It should be being produced according to specification and standards compliance all of the time, whether we're there or not. So this is where artificial intelligence, predictive analytics can really drive that always on, always complying culture. So I really see this as a big game change that's coming within the food sector. As the costs of these things come down, we can ensure that food is more consistently produced in a nutritious and safe way by the use of this kind of technology that is really coming over the horizon. And it's a very exciting period, not only to be in food, but also the technologies that are coming. So big changes with that. And also IoT, the Internet of Things, where everything's connected. And we love things to be connected. We kind of expect our phones to be talking to all sorts of things, and it's the same in the food industry as well. that we are having this connectivity. For us, it's great because when we go and do audits, for example, we can use auditors anywhere in the world for remote auditing, or what we call immersive audits, where we immerse ourselves in the client's world. Great also for unannounced audits that are becoming much more common within the food industry as people become much more comfortable with having unannounced audits. So technology is really changing the way that assurance in food is operating, the way that standards are being delivered. Great benefits with artificial intelligence as a new technology coming in to drive that predictive analytics. So yeah, I mean, I just changed my car. I mean, I got this new car I've got. It's got this thing you talk to it, so you can control everything pretty much from within the car just by talking to it. And on a drive home, you know, at a silent part of the journey, I thought, what can I talk to it about? So I just said, "Hey Mercedes, are you a computer?" And then the thing answers, "No, I'm artificial intelligence." So you can see how artificial intelligence is becoming part of our everyday life. It's being integrated into automotive, and this will cascade over into the food sector, as we're beginning to see.
Thanks, Richard. Coming to you specifically on this particular technology, which you have been working on this, Brent, how do you think we can use this particular technology for upcycling the various products, and also in utilization of waste and bringing in greater value into the product?
Sure. So the majority of projects for upcycling products is focused primarily on agricultural food products, fruits and vegetables, what have you, that don't meet the spec to distribute in a fresh form through your traditional grocery chain. So in terms of the, again, conversion time of using this technology to take fresh product to shelf-stable form in pretty challenging environments is something that we've focused on. I think in India, there's multiple opportunities to employ that model. Two other areas of upcycling food products would be in the baked food industry. So we've discovered a processing protocol using vacuum microwave to take a small portion of moisture out of a finished baked good, therefore elongating the shelf life by stagnating the staling process. And so a donut that typically would go hard in 2 or 3 days when it's on shelf in your local grocery store now has a shelf life of over 30 to 40 days. And so what does that do? It eliminates mass amount of waste that you're seeing through that particular vertical. And so we're seeing some good projects evolve there with some large baking organizations. And lastly would be in the dairy industry. So, you know, historically, if the farmer's got too much milk and you can't sell it at market, what do you do with it? You pour it down the drain. There's not any other way to preserve it, because even if you're going to refrigerate it, it's going to have a finite shelf life. And now with the use of vacuum microwave technology specifically, you can readily convert a number of dairy materials, whether that be high value proteins, whether that be fresh cheese or yogurt for that matter, and convert that then into shelf stable snacks or ingredients, which typically again would have shelf lives north of 1 year, so long as it's packaged appropriately. So in those 3 specific cases, I can see them applying to the Indian market, given the opportunity to connect with the right organizations.
Thanks. Thanks, Brent. If I have to ask you one common question to all 3 of you, that would be about if you can gaze into future about the Indian food processing industry, as to what do you think are the big opportunities, and what do you think are the challenges, and how do you think the Indian company should be investing in this areas?
I'll just launch off with an observation, really, that I think that we need to start looking at waste as a resource, and I think that Shanthan would probably have a view about that. So really focusing on a circular economy, using waste as a resource. I think what Shanthan has been talking about is extremely exciting, very future focused, and I think there's a huge amount to be done in that space for the good of everyone and for the good of the planet. And I think the technologies that Brent is talking about again is also reducing waste. The thought of throwing away perfectly good milk, for example, is horrifying to anybody. So, you know, using the technology to, again, prevent waste, I think is going to be critical in the future.
Yep. Maybe just adding on. Thanks, Richard. Um, I would see that in the future it'll be really exciting once the infrastructure for this waste collection and supply picks up in India, because really right now the waste material is there. When we talk specifically about used cooking oil, this is now being reused in the food streams. It is going to other forms, stalls, restaurants, etc. And so the health impact is there, right? So but what is the challenge here is, what is a sustainably a commercial viable solution to remove this used cooking oil from the food stream? Now, I think it'll be really exciting in the future once we see more of this being tapped into and unlocked in India, and further driving more innovation within India itself. Like I gave the example earlier about the waste plastics recycling innovation that's happening in England, and in partnership with Unilever for green packaging. Now imagine a similar circularity solution in India itself, whereby um, refining waste recycling technologies can be developed, invested in by the government for scale up, where collaborations with companies like Nestle are there to create the value in the chemicals, but there is demand coming in from the food sector for green plastics, green chemicals in packaging itself. So there is that circular solution. Now, going into sustainable fleet management, we have a lot of collaborations right now, again in Europe, whereby, for example, with McDonald's and Harvey's in the Netherlands, where the used cooking oil from McDonald's, which is used in the trucks and transportation by the fries, by Harvey's transportation company. And this used cooking oil is used and to produce a renewable diesel by Nestle, which is used to fuel the trucks. So thereby creating that circular solution, circularity solution model within McDonald's and Harvey's in the Netherlands. And so we're a step away in India. I think the first step that we have to take is to create that sustainable supply and unlock the feedstock potential. And once that happens, the next step is easily the value creation. But first, you need the feedstock, and it just needs to be unlocked.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'll add on to how we view the opportunity in India regarding, taking advantage of certain waste streams. Is for us is connecting with the right organizations. It's clear that we have a solution, and now purpose of participating today and actually working with several colleagues to try and broaden the awareness of the platform that we have implemented with several other companies internationally, is to address those issues head on by connecting with the right people. And if we can do so, I'm a firm believer that we can help provide part of the solution to reducing waste in India and providing a lot more healthier, shelf-stable food for a broader audience than maybe just the middle or upper class.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Mr. Coonan, what I would also throw into the pot is that we need protein. The world needs protein. The question is, where does that protein come from? Certainly in Western Europe, insect protein is becoming very front and center as an emerging technology. There's different ways of producing insect protein, but I'm sure that insect protein will become part of the protein equation, the protein mix in future. And again, this is another area where India could step into and become a market leader in producing safe insect protein-based, not just products, but also raw materials for inclusion in other food products. And I think that's got a very exciting future in looking at alternative protein sources. And you could say, well, there are other protein sources to do with mung beans and all sorts of different vegetable sources. as we're encouraged to eat less meat and eat more plant-based foods. So alternative protein sources are going to be very important, for sure.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Brent and Shantan. And with that, I would open up the session for the question and answers, questions from the audiences. Yeah,
Sure.
over to you, Rinka.
Great. Thank you so much. I think it was a brilliant discussion in terms of, where we see this all going really in the case of food. And I'll come back to, a little bit around also what the government is seeing, right, in terms of some of the areas. I think the first one is for Shantan, is that, how do you see the whole challenge of collection of materials? And you did speak about that in terms of collecting the waste. And I think in India, and I know that the food authorities tried to do something around that a couple of years ago as well, is in terms of, plastic waste pickup and management. I think when we're talking about sustainability, that is very important. And the fact that India, and I think the question is really around, it is a largely MSME, it's largely small, medium scale companies. How does one go about this whole, and are there any, and I would probably add on to that, are there any best practices that you've seen in other countries, which possibly we could be looking at in terms of collection of waste material and therefore reprocessing it? Because most of the companies would just, take their produce and take it to a disposing yard or whatever, and, just dispose it off. So how does one do this whole thing of picking it up, recycling it, using it back? So any good learnings from them?
Yep, sure. So with reference to, I'll give the example of used cooking oil again, as it pertains to the food industry in India. So two things are both at the point of collection in commercial sectors and also collecting the waste from commercial centers. So, for example, with Nestle, we acquired Mahoney Environmental in the US, which is a leading used cooking oil collection company and aggregator. So through there, we have some very strong expertise and knowledge on global best practices for actual used cooking oil collection to improve the bottom line and create value in the whole collection process within a kitchen, within a restaurant, within a factory itself. So that's one route. Secondly, we see that while we work with the leading traders and suppliers to create the demand, here is where that commercial value proposition comes to the smaller collectors, MSMEs, entrepreneurs, and it filters down. I spoke about a multiplier effect, and this is really how those waste collection infrastructure is developed globally from a market in its infancy to the most mature markets out there. You need to start first with creating that demand and supply, and then growing volumes. What I mean also by growing volumes, and especially what we do in India itself, with some of our partners, I mentioned, we're actually going restaurant to restaurant, business to business, company to company, connecting the dots. So where's the used cooking oil being produced? Which companies are producing it? Who's willing to sit at the table with a collector, which Nestle is purchasing from, and then growing volumes there. And not only within a municipality, but extending that across municipalities in a state and across regions as well. So it's a really, I mean, we see the opportunity in India as it's a market in its infancy, and it requires some work. But I think it's a critical issue to remove this waste from our food streams and in a sustainable manner. And so this is the role we're excited to play.
Great, thank you. Richard, I think you already answered this question partly in terms of how does, companies that can't afford to do the large BRC certifications and stuff like that. Are you doing anything specifically in India to work with the ecosystem in terms of certain specific initiatives from the BSI, which maybe you'd like to just touch upon and talk about?
My experience with India is that Indians like Indian solutions to Indian problems. And sure, India will look overseas to other markets, other countries, and take some guidance from that. But ultimately, what works for India has to come from within India. And we are working with all nations, and including India as well, to really shape a program that would work really well, that's highly appropriate for the uniqueness of the Indian food production sector. So, and this means really driving several aspects of it. One aspect that we don't get involved with is enforcement. So whilst you need to have achievable and realistic standards to produce food safely, you also need the enforcement dimension, the carrot and the stick, if you like. And from my experience with India, that enforcement part perhaps is an opportunity that could be strengthened, and also needs looking at. But as I say, that's not something that we get involved with. But producing a program which is appropriate for India, I think is one that would have very strong uptake, and would also establish India on its own 2 feet on the international stage when it comes to food safety and production. Because as Mr. Gurnan was saying earlier, you know, some of the world's best food products come from India. The nation has one of the richest soils on the planet. You can grow anything in India. You know, wines, for example, good wines just don't seem to get outside of India for some reason. Yet India produces some fantastic wine. So there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot that needs to be done. And I think engaging with FSSAI, for example, I think is absolutely critical, and to help bring about, you know, more food that is safe and good quality to eat. But it's not just from our studies, you know, it's food has to be more than just something which tastes good and to be nutritious. People also have to trust the products that they are buying. Trust not only in the brand, but in the trust and the safety in the products. We all do it when we look at food products. We pick them up, we look at the label, we wonder, you know, where was this produced? How was it produced? Was slave labor or child labor involved in its production? So we really want to find out more about what the customer promise is that particular brand producing that product is actually trying to convey to us. And companies can do this for themselves. They can say, you know, our product was produced from, I don't know, chickens watching satellite television, if that was important, just to be, you know, ridiculous about it. But if it's important, they can make that claim. But it's much better for an independent third party organization like ourselves, for example, that can come in and actually verify that claim. And one of the things that we're renowned for is the world's oldest trust mark, the BSI Kite mark. And this particular trust mark is known throughout the world, and customers have a strong affection for the card mark because they can believe that particular consumer promise is independently validated. They can trust the product as well as the product being safe and nutritious. So full of opportunity, and I think that this is a very good moment for India really to step forward by recognizing some of these key points, integrating it into a food program that's just right for Indian producers.
No, absolutely. And I think it's absolutely at the right time when consumers are looking for such kind of information to make a better food choice by looking through labels. Yeah, and when they're looking at labels and they know that this has got certified for a particular thing, whether it's food safety or what have you. But I think it's important. I think that the good thing is that the FSSAI is also looking at that, and that's how they've come up with a whole bunch of certifications and logos, which makes easier for consumers to just choose, which is this the right product for me or not? Whether do I want to buy? Do I want to pay a premium for it? You know, it's just about making choices, and I think that's going to be super critical as we go along, and that's what we're going to be seeing. We are going to be seeing a lot of that as we, in the next couple of years.
And you know, there's the new style of cryptographic QR codes. I mean, anybody can produce a QR code. You just put the URL into a QR code generator, and you get a QR code out. You can put that on the product, and you can scan that, and on your phone, it'll take you to a website or a video or something. Very important with the direct-to-consumer model. But the new QR codes, we're working with a really great company that is producing a cryptographic ink. I didn't know what a cryptographic ink was until recently, but it's in a very exciting technology. So there's specific algorithms actually in the ink that the camera picks up on the phone that takes you to a website where you have to put in a code, a PIN code, and it will tell you whether that product is actually the genuine product or not. So again, it's another means to build that trust that the product is what it is, what the consumer promise is actually being verified. So it adds another layer of verification through cryptographic ink in a QR code. Remember where you heard it first, because this is another new technology which is coming.
And I think that's fascinating, because I think in India we do have a biggest challenge of counterfeits, and
Exactly.
so that would be
That's
a
it.
good thing to just kind of look at, and how do you push this kind of a technology really to how do you crack that. So I think that's great, and I think it'll be great if you're working with the FSSAI for the different standard levels. And maybe just a connecting question to that is really, does BSI also look at training and capability building in this space, whether it's in terms of
Well, you've actually hit the nail right on the head. That it's all very well, pushing out these standards, but people have to understand them. So training and education is very important. I said to someone the other day, what's the difference between education and training? And they didn't know. So you can train, I don't know, you could train, people to do things. You could train an animal to do something, but it won't know why. And it's the educational part which covers the why. Why are you doing this? I can be trained to turn the handle of this mug to face north every day because it's a requirement, but I don't know why. But the educational part is the why. So training is important, but the educational piece also has to be there. And I think this is where good quality training actually helps to educate the why around why these things are necessary. And
right.
it comes from a culture. It's actually to do with a food safety culture, and it's about people. And yes, you can have food safety management systems, but if you're not operating the food safety management system correctly, this food is unsafe. Um, it's a bit like someone said to me, well, is a Volvo car a safe car? Well, yes, it is a safe car, but if it's driven badly, it's a very unsafe car, if you see what I mean. So being able to drive the car through training and education and being able to drive it safely makes the difference between a car which is designed to be built to be safe, but also one that is safe to drive for other people not to be injured from a dangerous use. So driving that culture of food safety within all organizations is extremely important, and training has a big part to play in that, and educating people why they need to be doing these things, so that we can be comfortable that when auditors aren't there to do a food safety inspection or audit, that it is being run in a truly safe way according to the compliance that's necessary.
Absolutely, and we need to drive a food
Rinka,
safety culture, like I say. So
Rinka, can I just add on to this point? There's one thing that we've seen as well in India recently is this consumer-driven demand for food safety. And so what we've seen actually is that companies that are offering, for example, dine-out services, starting to differentiate themselves by recycling the used cooking oil and marketing themselves to encourage dine out in order to educate that actually dining out is healthy if you're dining out somewhere where the used cooking oil is being recycled and disposed of. Also, a lot of interest we see in the food manufacturing industry in India is a trend towards sustainable and healthy products. And so companies looking to differentiate themselves from others and competitors through this competitive advantage of healthy food and used cooking oil recycling. So I just wanted to add that that's a trend we've seen as well. It's very exciting.
Like Ms. Thompe said, that it's not about using sustainability as a cost. It is really about sometimes using it as a marketing tool as well. I mean, if you're doing a good thing and you're doing it good for the planet, that's also something you need to talk about. So I think, so thank you so much. So I have the last two questions for Brent. So Brent, what are some of the retail brand of snacks that use your technology? And I think there is a question around, how do I reach out if I want to test out some ideas in snacks?
Well, first, quite easy. We have a virtual booth at this particular trade show, so there's some contact information through that. We can connect and discuss your interest thereafter. But in regards to consumer brands that are using our technology, Bear Snacks, which is obviously produced by PepsiCo, is one that's harnessed vacuum microwave for a line of healthier fruit chip products, primarily distributed through the North American marketplace. We're obviously engaged with Arla and Dole and other companies that you mentioned, again, the preamble. I can't talk in too much detail with those projects due to confidentiality requirements, but I will say that within our licensee ecosystem of the 50 odd companies, about 70% of those are B2B. So they're producing ingredients that they're on selling to the likes of General Mills and Kellogg's and Nestle to include in a number of new applications that they're bringing to market, whether that be a muesli cereal, whether that be an energy bar, a smoothie product. That's where we're seeing the most traction amongst our licensees typically, is selling this as a commoditized high value good to the larger CPG players.
Absolutely. And I think, when I have healthy muesli and stuff like that, and I see a lot of candied fruits in there, I'm like, this has got a lot of sugar, and why should I be having that? So, I mean, it'll be great if there's technologies like your technologies, if it can create dried fruits, which can go in as an inclusion or as a topping into yogurt, etc., could also be an interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with that at one point. I spoke with Calbee, our partner in Japan, for high quality snacks yesterday. And one of the key points of feedback from their market trialing was certain consumers couldn't believe that there was no added sugar in their dried apple product. They're like, couldn't believe it. And that was obviously a net positive for Calbee looking at expanding that portfolio moving forward.
Right. I think the last question is around comparison of your technology with solar and other drying technologies in terms of energy consumption. So is it a much more intensive, because freeze drying, for example, is highly energy intensive and stuff like that. So is there any comparisons that you have between them?
I assume when you're referring to solar, you're talking about literally putting the food out in the sun and letting it dry slowly. So there's some key differentiating factors between a high technology dehydration platform and just putting food out in the sun to dry. Obviously, uniformity of drying, potential for contamination, etc. But in terms of energy consumption for our particular platform, for every 1 kilowatt that is rated on the machinery, it will evaporate approximately 1 kilogram of water per hour. And the consumption is about double that. So 1.9 kilowatt hours will be consumed to equate to 1 kilogram of water removal. When compared to freeze dry, it's quite similar, slightly less, but it's not a remarkable difference, to be frank.
Okay. Right. No, great. I think, Gauri, do you have anything else to add on? Would you like to add any other comment to kind of ice this off?
Not much. I think it has been an exciting session, having spoken to all three of you, Brent, Shantam, and Richard. There's a lot happening in the sector of food processing, and also the work which is being done by each one of you is exciting. And I'm eagerly looking forward to interact with you all further and to see what best we can bring into the Indian food processing industry and use the technologies which you people are developing. Thank you very much.
I'd really like to thank all of you for your time today, and some of you at a very odd time as well, and I'm really sorry for that, but it's wonderful. It was a fantastic conversation to bring in some of the new technologies and open up a lot of people's minds in India, to be honest with you, in terms of what are the different ways that you could be accessing. So I'm sure a lot of people will reach out to your counterparts in India and to see how we can take this forward. I'd really like to thank Richard for BSI to also partner with us, like I said, and really bring this whole, conversation to a much more, I would say, effective way, how we could get it out to so many people. I think we had more than 3,000 people, tuning in, listening to all our conversations, and I think that's been, I think, a great achievement. And I'm sure, Abhinav from FICCI, myself from Thinking Folks, we'll take a lot of these points which have come up from these conversations forward. We will be taking it to the ministries. We will be taking it to the different forums and see how do we, build this whole ecosystem together. So, thanks, Brent and Shantan, for joining in. And like you said, a lot of people, please do go into the booths, listen into what they have to say. We will be downloading a lot of this information and sending it out as well. So yes, thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate your time, all of you. Thank you, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks all.
Very good. Have a great evening. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rinka. Yeah, before we bring the close to the session, I would like to just comment on Richard's point on food printing. You talk about 3D food printing as the future technology. Just to apprise you that we at FICCI working very closely with some of the government bodies, and soon we are going to launch some initiative in this matter. I will get in touch with you and BSI because we have identified this sector as a huge potential for 3D printing in the snacks. So I'll come back to you on this. And,
excellent.
And before we bring the close session, I would like to propose a formal vote of thanks to all the speakers who have joined us in the last 2 days of session. A special thanks to Ministry of Food Processing Industry for being supporting this event as a government partner, and all other 9 industry partners who supported this summit from its inception of the summit till right now. I mean, till today, we have been getting their continuous support. Thank you so much for all the sponsors and partners. I would also like to thank the exhibitors. We have more than 54 exhibitors from industry, from FBOs, from startups, from academia who have come over this 2 days of event. And I hope they have some good exposure, consumer awareness about their company, their brand, and some fruitful B2B meetings. I would also like to say a word of thanks to participants who have been with us for 2 days. And I think as Rinka said, the number is around 3,000, and I'm sure it may be, since it's available on YouTube, its outreach will be much more than that. And at the outset, I would like to apprise you that yesterday we also unveiled a knowledge paper on innovation in food and nutrition towards a healthier India. It will be shared with all the speakers as well as the participants, and the same will be made available on the FICCI website for any other user to download for in the future. With all this, I just want to say thanks you for being with us. Thank you, Rinka. Thank you, Ms. Tonpe, because you are the driving force. You are give the genesis to this entire summit. Rinka is the brainchild, I would say. It's all efforts goes to Rinka, and big applaud. And I think we have been able to draw a very good, I can actually say it's a big success for us. It was first initiative and turned out to be a successful event. Thank you so much, Rinka and to Mr. Tonpe.
Yeah, and I would just like to just add on to that is to just thank FICCI, I think, for giving us the opportunity. I mean, it is really for us to be, and that's the conversation we actually started having a couple of months ago. And I kept pushing Abhinav, saying, this is an area we need to talk about. We need to really bring about innovation. How are we bringing about in the food system? And I think it's fabulous that we've managed to have that conversation reach to this culmination. So thank you so much, Abhinav and the entire FICCI team to bring this whole thing together. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, Ben, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.